We're going to continue looking at building together brick by brick and what it looks like to build brick by brick. And the verse of consideration we'll be reading every time is Nehemiah chapter 4, verse 6, which says, "So we built the wall, and all the people was joined together to half its height, for the people had a mind to work." And we will continue to consider that as we go through this week. Now, this afternoon, I want us to consider the first aspect of Nehemiah's journey and compare it to a New Testament story that I think will be very relevant to us today. If we remember this morning when we read Nehemiah chapter 1, verses 3 through 4, we were looking at Nehemiah's concern for the walls surrounding Jerusalem. And he had great concern about the condition of Jerusalem and the walls being in destruction and disrepair. And remember when he said, "And they said to me, the remnant there in the province who had survived the exile is in great trouble and shame. The wall of Jerusalem is broken down, and its gates are destroyed by fire. As soon as I heard these words, I sat down and wept and mourned for days, and I continued fasting and praying before the God of heaven." And we talked about and considered how that Nehemiah had a great care and concern for that which was broken. And that was evident in the way that he responded and acted and showed great courage in going and setting forward to build the walls back. I want us to consider a story in the New Testament where Jesus finds himself in great agony in the situation he was presented with. In Mark chapter 6, we find Jesus preparing to feed the 5,000. We know the story is the feeding of the 5,000. But I think it's important for us to understand some of the context of the story before we read it. This comes at a point where Jesus had just heard about the passing of John the Baptist. Jesus was exhausted, and he was ready for some time alone. This is one of the few stories that's mentioned, highlighted in all four Gospels. And so this is an important story. Starting in verse 30, it says, "The apostles returned to Jesus and told him that what they had done and taught. And he said to them, 'Come away by yourselves to a desolate place and rest a while.' For many were coming and going, and they had no leisure even to eat. And they went away in the boat to a desolate place by themselves. Now many saw them going and recognized them, and they ran there on foot from all the towns and got there ahead of them. When he went ashore, he saw a great crowd, and he had compassion on them because they were like sheep without a shepherd, and he began to teach them many things. And when it grew late, his disciples came to him and said, 'This is a desolate place, and the hour is now late. Send them away to go into the surrounding countryside and villages and buy themselves something to eat.' But he answered them, 'You give them something to eat.' And they said to him, 'Shall we go and buy 200 denarii worth of bread and give it to them to eat?' And he said to them, 'How many loaves do you have? Go and see.' And when they had found out, they said, 5 and 2 fish. Then he commanded them all to sit down in groups on the green grass. And they sat down in groups by hundreds and by 50s. And taking the 5 loaves and 2 fish, he looked up to heaven and said a blessing, and broke the loaves and gave them to the disciples to set before the people. And he divided the 2 fish among them all. And when they all ate and were satisfied, they took up 12 baskets full of broken pieces and of fish. And those who ate the loaves were 5,000 men." I want us to notice in this story, there's a couple of things that we should consider. First, the compassion of Jesus. Jesus had lost his cousin John. He cared for his cousin. He was tired. He had spent time traveling, and he was ready for a break. Have we ever been in that situation? Have we lost someone we cared about? Have we found ourselves overworked, overstressed, just tired? Well, Jesus was in that place. He said, "Let's go somewhere else. Let's go to a desolate place." But what happens? The people see them. Now, if you've ever seen the Sea of Galilee, either traveled there or seen a map, you would understand the Sea of Galilee, it really isn't that big. And if you're in a boat and you're traveling along the Sea of Galilee, it's likely that if someone they can see and tell who that is, unless they're in the middle of the sea. It's not a very big body of water. Yet as they were traveling, they saw Jesus, and they went and they started chasing after him to follow him so that they could hear him. Jesus, who's tired, who lost a loved one, needed a break. It says that he saw the crowds and had compassion for them. You know, Jesus, even in that moment, cared about the people. He says, because they were harassed and helpless. He saw them not as people that had means and had opportunity, but he saw those that were helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. You see, Jesus looked out at the brokenness of man, and he had compassion. And he saw lives that needed to be touched. He saw people that needed to be fed. He saw those that needed to be encouraged. And his compassion took over. And it wasn't his fleshly weakness. It wasn't his sorrow. It wasn't any of those things. But his compassion took charge. Now, it'd be real easy for Jesus to have the mindset that, as Buzz Lightyear here, that there seems to be no sign of intelligent life anywhere. These people left their homes without any food. They're traveling to a desolate place. What are their plans? What were they planning to do? Well, it's pretty clear they had no plans. And you might just look at that and you just think, people are the worst. They never make plans. They never take care of themselves. They're always needy. But Jesus didn't look at them in that way. He didn't look at them like they were the scum of the earth. He looked at them as people that needed a shepherd. They needed help. You know, Jesus was in the boat. He could have stayed on the boat. He could have stayed away from the people. He would have been just fine. But the people needed him. So he had compassion on them. You know, people are the worst today as well, aren't they? You tell them the truth. You tell them what God's word says, and what do? The opposite. Time hasn't changed. What happened with Moses when he delivered or went to go receive the 10 Commandments? He leaves for a little while, and what happens? They've got a golden calf. Do they not remember the plagues? Do they not remember the crossing of the Red Sea? People are the worst. Yet Jesus cared for the people. He looked out and he saw their need and he had compassion on them. He didn't look at them with disgust, but he looked at them with love. We live in a society today that's full of brokenness. We see those that would thieve and steal, those that would live riotously and live lives of abundance while others are suffering. We see women who will exchange their bodies for profit. We see men and women fighting wars, death. We see hungry and homeless, people that have no means to provide their way. We see homes where the fathers have left, and we see brokenness all around. If our eyes are open, we'll see the brokenness of the world. It's not that hard to see, but you know, God does not desire for the brokenness to remain. Jesus looked at them with compassion, not just so that they would stay as they were and he just felt sorry for them. He had compassion on them so he could provide to them a way to sustain themselves. You know, we've got to be evangelistically minded with our eyes open. Someone mentioned recently in a lesson, when you're playing basketball and you're dribbling basketball, you don't look down at the basketball, because if you do that, you can't see the defenders, you can't see what's coming, and more likely you'll get the ball stolen. You keep your eye up. You have confidence and trust in your ability to dribble the ball, but you keep your eyes up so you can see the defenders, you can see what's coming. And we've got to have an evangelistic mindset that we're seeing what's happening in the world around us, and we're seeing it with concern and care. That we're not living in our little box and living in our own little lives unaffected by the brokenness of the world. But you know, Jesus sees something when he created perfection. And so, you know, when I think of the Garden of Eden, I can't truly picture it. You know, there have been artistic renderings. There have been people that have tried to do landscaping. Even AI has given it a go. But nobody really can comprehend the beauty of the garden. Why? Because we're looking through broken eyes. We're looking through eyes and a mind and a vision that hasn't seen perfection. But you know, Jesus knew what beauty looked like. He knew what perfection looked like. He created it. He knew what it was. Yet on earth, he saw brokenness. He saw disease. He saw sickness. He saw sorrow. He saw sheep without a shepherd. And Jesus looked at them with compassion. But Jesus also wept for the broken. We talked about Nehemiah having a mournful spirit and weeping for the broken wall. Jesus mourned and wept when he looked down on Jerusalem. In Luke chapter 19 and verse 41 it says, "And when he drew near and saw the city, he wept over it, saying, would that you had known on this day the things that make for peace." You see, Jesus looked down on Jerusalem as he knew he would ultimately be put to death in that place. And he wept over it. Not because of his own suffering that was to come, not in this moment. His weeping was for them. Because they didn't know what was available to them. They didn't know what he could see and what he knew. It says, "But now they are hidden from your eyes. For the days will come upon you when your enemies will set up a barricade around you and surround you and hem you on every side and tear you down to the ground, you and your children within you, and they will not leave one stone upon another in you because you did not know the time of your visitation." See, Jesus knew what was coming. He knew not only the suffering and the sickness and the brokenness of the society, but he knew the punishment and the destruction that was coming on Jerusalem. And he had compassion, and he wept for them. The Bible shows us many different times where people weep for those things that are broken. I think of the psalmist David in Psalm 119 verse 136, "My eyes shed streams of tears because people do not keep your law." When's the last time you have wept for others? When's the last time you have shed streams of tears for the broken? The Apostle Paul writes in Romans chapter 9 verses 2 and 3 that I have great sorrow and unceasing anguish in my heart, for I could wish that I myself were accursed and cut off for Christ for the sake of my brothers, my kinsmen according to the flesh. Paul, knowing the brokenness of life, understanding his separation from God and his own turning to Christ, said, I would be willing to sacrifice myself for them because they just don't see it. They just don't understand it. They don't know the brokenness that they're living in. Yet Jesus looked down on the brokenness and he had compassion and he cared. And he said, they need a shepherd. And that's a truth that we need to understand. We need a shepherd. And Jesus provides that leadership for us. And as we consider in this series this week, understanding the need of a team, we need to understand who the leader of that team is. It's Jesus Christ, the chief shepherd. And as the chief shepherd, he lays out instructions for his flock. He tends and cares for his flock. And John chapter 10, verse 14 through 16 says, I am the good shepherd. I know my own, and my own know me. Just as the Father knows me, and I know the Father, and I lay down my life for the sheep, and I have other sheep that are not of this fold. I must bring them also, and they will listen to my voice, so there will be one flock, one shepherd. Jesus has proclaimed to the whole world that he's willing to be their shepherd. Not just the descendants of Abraham, not just the people that Nehemiah was talking to, but all of mankind can come and be under the care of one shepherd, that there would be one flock under the supervision of Jesus Christ. He's the leader that serves. He is the shepherd that provides and feeds. Isaiah 40 verse 11 says, he will tend his flock like a shepherd. He will gather the lambs in his arms. He will carry them in his bosom and gently lead those that are with young. Jesus tends to his flock. He cares for his flock. It's not just that he had compassion, but he actually provided a structure and a way for the sheep to have order. You see, a shepherd provides order for the sheep. And Jesus provides order for his church so that there can be organization, so there can be a system in place for the members to be edified, for the lost to be saved, so that the kingdom of Christ can grow. And he provides that as the shepherd. He provides the structure. And know this, Jesus doesn't need any of us to do his work for him. Jesus has all power. He could speak it and it could exist. In fact, Hebrews chapter 13, starting verse 20 says, "Now may the God of peace, who brought again from the dead our Lord Jesus, the great shepherd of the sheep, by the blood of the eternal covenant, equip you with everything good, that you may do his will, working in us that which is pleasing in his sight, through Jesus Christ, to whom be glory forever and ever. Amen." Jesus doesn't need us, yet he calls us to be his. He asks us, invites us into a relationship with him so that we can serve alongside him. He doesn't dictate and demand. He doesn't do all of it himself, but he equips his sheep to serve. You know, Jesus had all the power. He could have provided the food instantly to all those that were in the crowd. He didn't have to ask his servants to help. But you know, Christ worked with his team. He worked with his disciples. He told them to go out and see. Could he have created bread out of thin air? Absolutely. Could he have manifested fish? Absolutely. But what did he choose to do? He chose to provide an opportunity for his team to serve. And what did they do? They went out. They did what he said. They went to go see whether they had any bread. And they came back and said, "We have 5 loaves and 2 fishes. We have some from bread." They went and they did. Did Jesus need that of them? No. But he equipped them with the ability to serve. Now, we need to be ready to serve. You know, in Titus chapter 3 and verse 1, it says, "Remind them to be submissive to rulers and authorities, to be obedient, and to be ready for every good work." We need to be ready to serve. Not only were the disciples sent out to go find whether or not there was any food for them to share in, but they found someone who was prepared. They found a little boy who had a lunch packed. You know, you hear that and you might think the little boy's the hero of the story. Some might say it was his mom for packing his lunch. But you know, he was there ready to be a servant. And whether you see yourself in this story as one of the apostles going and seeking, or you are the child who has just something small to offer, know this: God will use you in his story. God will make miraculous things happen if you will show up and you'll be willing to use your talents for him. That you'll be ready for every good work. You say, "Well, what can I do?" You know, as Nehemiah considered what his options were, what did he do? He went and sought the king. He had access to the king of Persia. And because he had access to the king of Persia, he was able to ask for things he couldn't have procured himself. He couldn't have got the lumber himself, but he asked someone who had the authority to give it. In the same way, we have an opportunity to approach God and ask for things. How often do we not ask? How often do we approach him in shame? The Bible says, "Ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and it will be open to you." Why do we lack the faith to ask for what we need to do his work? He's calling us and asking us to be engaged. He is equipping us with the talents necessary to fulfill his mission and his goals. Yet we won't approach him. We don't ask in faith. We don't pray in confidence that he will provide the things we need. But we have to ask. We have to seek. We have to knock. We can't just sit back and hope those things will just happen. But when we seek him, he provides opportunity. The child with the food didn't realize he would be responsible for feeding thousands. No one asked him to prepare a meal for thousands. He only brought enough for him and maybe a few people. Yet Jesus magnified it. Jesus can magnify even your smallest talent and ability. I've been here not even a full day, and I've witnessed and watched and seen so many things happen in this congregation. People's talents being used in different ways. In fact, when y'all were setting up for lunch, I was like, man, they're moving the chairs real good. Mission accomplished. Good team. Everybody knows what their job, right? Everybody's scooting their chairs up. We have a variety of talents. And God's going to use those talents for his glory. We just have to be there and be ready to serve. You say, well, where do I serve? Where do I go? It's a great question. Because sometimes we don't understand or see the opportunities right in front of us. But know this, the Lord sees them. But He's waiting for His laborers to show themselves, to bring your bag of food, to bring your talent to the table. And He says in Matthew chapter 9, verse 37 and 38, then He said to His disciples, the harvest is plenteous, but the laborers are few. Therefore pray earnestly to the Lord of the harvest to send out laborers into His harvest. There has never been a lack of opportunities. There's never been a lack of work that needs to be done. There's only always been a lack of laborers. People that just show up and say, here am I, send me. People that just show up and say, how can I work? How can I be of help? How can I assist? How can I make this body grow? Are you asking those questions? Are you participating in the feeding of the 5,000, not by the miraculous act and the thing that Jesus alone can do, but by being present and being willing to serve? Jesus had a heart for the broken, but He still took time to equip His servants and gave them opportunity to serve. God will use you. Now, if you're in leadership, be mindful of these principles as well. If you're in leadership of this congregation, because sometimes we see, and I can speak for myself back home, sometimes it's easier for me to just do it than equip someone else to do it. But that's not the way of Christ. He could have done it in an instant, but what did He do? He chose to equip His servants to give them a task. Maybe you are the best at that task. Maybe there's no one better than you at that. It's still good to serve and allow someone else that opportunity. It's still good to give others those chances to serve. The laborers are few. Jesus wants you as a worker in His kingdom.